Well, here we are again. Hey people, Tyranno here, and the title is pretty self-explanatory, but I have some introductory things to say anyway. If you want to skip straight to the cartoons, the time's on screen. First off, as always, this video is about anime I watched in 2015, whether it was released this year or not. As such, this shouldn't really be viewed as a proper list as much as a series of recommendations. Second, I've made the decision to limit this list to 10, and the reason is basically last year's video. I watched a lot more anime than 10, however, I felt that trying to talk about too much last year ended up making the video somewhat unfocused and the writing suffered. As such, I'm limiting this video so I can give each show its due attention. This also means that I'll be cutting out a lot of good stuff, so I'll quickly list off some honorable mentions first. Sidonia no Kishi Season 2, and Durarara Season 2. I don't want to dedicate whole sections to Season 2s of shows that I already watched and talked about, so I'll say here that I enjoyed these Season 2s every bit as much as the first seasons. There is an exception to this rule early on, but we'll get there soon enough. K-On! I absolutely love K-On! Make no mistake, the only reason I'm not talking about it here is because I haven't finished Season 2, and I get the distinct sense that finishing Season 2 is absolutely necessary before I discuss it. If I had finished Season 2 by this point, who knows, it probably would have been high. Sankarea, a series I feel is worth mentioning if for no other reason than how strong its first few episodes were. The opening episodes gave a deep sense of foreboding and pondering melancholy that the later episodes just couldn't keep up, traded off for an okay romance and an okay ending. If the whole series was like the first few episodes, I guarantee it would have made the list. Fooly Cooly. While I did watch it this past year, it's not on here because frankly, I have no idea what to make of it. I know it was fantastic, but it's a show that practically demands a second viewing because even now I'm still trying to wrap my head around what I saw. But what I did see was amazing. I could go on like this because there's plenty to talk about, but I think it's time we get to the meat and potatoes of this list. Without further ado... Have you ever wanted to watch cute girls duke it out in epic tank battles? Of course you have. I mean, duh. Well, I've got good news for you. Girls in Panzer realizes that dream with surprising quality. Girls in Panzer is about the main character, Miho Nishizumi, leading her high school Senshato team, Senshato meaning the way of the tank, to glorious victory in battle against other schools, all battle being conducted in World War II-era tanks. Epic battles ensue, fun times are had. Girls und Panzer is a prime example of taking a silly and questionable premise and making it into something worthwhile. The show's characters are developed just enough to allow the viewer to root for them during battles, though most don't go through any significant change by the end outside of Miho. Given the show's short length, though, that's to be expected, and for what it's worth, the main cast are all likable enough that I didn't need them to go through any major development in order to get invested. All I needed were those awesome tank battles. The tank battles are what I feel really sell the show. Every major battle in this show is a thoroughly engaging affair. These are large-scale battles with a focus on plans and strategy that really make me figuratively bite my nails when something went wrong. It also helps that the odds were usually stacked against the protagonist, sometimes hilariously so, making the eventual victory so much more satisfying after the hard-fought path toward it. Or, maybe, the loss so much more hard after they were so close and fighting so hard. Well, that makes it sound much worse than it is, given that no one dies in this show due to unexplained future tech or whatever, but hey, this isn't meant to be a tear fest, and I, for one, am okay with that. Some may be surprised to see such a high-profile show as Fate Stay Night so low on this list. If you had told me that a year ago, I probably wouldn't have believed you, given that Fate Zero was and still is one of my favorites. I was excited for this show. I've been more cautious with hype as of late, but no amount of caution really prepared me for this show's first half. But I'm getting ahead of myself. For those who live under a rock, Fate Stay Night, Unlimited Blade Works, centers around Shiro Emiya, who is dragged into a conflict known as the Holy Grail War, when he summons a holy spirit, Saber. He tentatively teams up with classmate Rin Tosaka and her servant Archer, to duke it out with other masters and servants for possession of the Holy Grail, and lots of spoilers happen. To give some context on why I'm not so fond of the show's first half, I'll state that 1, I'm completely unfamiliar with the visual novel and thus had no idea what to expect, and 2, I had just come off a rewatch of Fate Zero and was expecting something like it. The last thing I wanted was fun high school times. Guess what I got? To be fair, that is a bit of a generalization, as there were a few action scenes and the midpoint finale was pretty gripping, but up until that point I was pretty bored. I guess the total shift from Fate Zero was what really put me off from getting into it. Going from Fate Zero's climactic and sorrowful finale to funny teacher lady being all cheerful and stuff was just too much for me. Frankly, I didn't even find Rin and Shiro to be that interesting as protagonists, the scenes where they were totally not falling for each other being a particularly tough slog. Thankfully, however, the show's second half alleviates almost all of my issues with the first half. There are better action scenes with greater stakes, Shiro and Archer's development was thoroughly gripping, and I even came to care about Rin and Shiro's relationship by the end. Not to mention, it was a bloodbath! I know I said I wanted it to be more like Fate Zero, but that's almost overboard. One last thing I must mention that should be obvious from the video is this show is bloody gorgeous. I said the same thing about Fate Zero, but this shows a whole other leap forward. Some of the second half's fights and the second opening are especially fantastic spectacles. Oh, and about the second season thing, I know this is somewhat a cheat, but given that the source material for this show existed before Fate Zero, it can kinda be considered its own thing, sort of. It's a cheat, I know, but man, I wanted to talk about it. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure follows the lives of the JoJos of the Joestar family, who learn to fight evil vampires and other wicked creatures with the power of Hamon and friendship. It's a wild-ass ride set to 70s rock, and it's pretty glorious. Much like Fate Stay Night, Unlimited Blade Works, I find JoJo's first part, Phantom Blood, to be honestly kind of boring, especially in comparison to its second part, Battle Tendency. The major difference here is that JoJo's boring part lasts only 8 episodes, as opposed to Fate Stay Night's half the show, leaving the rest of JoJo's runtime for a far more interesting arc. My main issue with Phantom Blood, which admittedly is still present in Battle Tendency though to a lesser degree, is the typical battle shonen trope of explaining everything. What I mean is the tendency in fights to explain every little action the fighters take, down to the smallest detail, like how JoJo will throw a quick punch followed by another character, namely Speedwagon, expositing for 30 seconds about the properties of that punch and how it's likely to affect whoever was on the receiving end. I find that overdrawn explanations like that in the middle of a battle really kill a battle's tension, and it slows it down to a dialogue-heavy snooze fest. That isn't all to say Phantom Blood isn't without its merit. Its villain is Dio, after all, who is a fantastic rival for JoJo, even if his morality is blatantly black and white. That is to say, evil for evil's sake. It all just pales in comparison to Battle Tendency. The second arc is an improvement in almost every conceivable way. The new JoJo is much more fun to follow, the battles are even more over the top and exciting, and it has a badass part cyborg Nazi who's actually a good guy kick evil ghoul ass. I never thought I'd say those words. And of course, major points for having Roundabout by Yes as the end credits theme. That practically made many an episode. I'll be the Kyoto Animation has quickly shot up my list of favorite animation studios this past year, and Hekkyuu Euphonium is one of many reasons why. Hekkyuu Euphonium is about the brass band club of Kitauji High School, and more specifically, new band member Kumiko. There's music, drama, passion, and all sorts of beautiful shots to sink your eyes into. Hekkyuu Euphonium is one of few anime in my personal experience to successfully pull off drama. There's a good quantity of well-developed characters here, and when conflict arises, it's both believable and engaging. A particularly noteworthy dynamic exists between the main character Kumiko and bandmate Reina Kosaka. Without giving away too much, Kumiko enters high school with some baggage, and it's with and through Reina that she works through it and becomes a better person, a development which was a joy to watch unfold. Being about a band, the show does have plenty to enjoy musically. Listening to the band members struggle through initial performances and constantly improve was a pleasure to listen to. As a former band member myself, I had a smile on my face, thinking, yep, that sounds about right. Also worth mentioning that the opening and ending songs are pretty enjoyable. I can't go without talking about how beautiful this show is. I personally find it rather difficult to use words to convey something's visuals, and this show is no exception. Regardless of my inability to express it, this show is beautiful. Something about the lighting, something about the character design, every individual element blends in almost seamlessly to make for some truly stunning animation, a lot of which is downright frameable. I'd almost go so far as to say it's KyoAni's best-looking TV series, but claiming that would be a stretch for me as someone who hasn't seen every show they've made, and with the recent airing of Myriad Colors Phantom World, that's not a fact I plan on changing. Whether you're looking for a good drama, a good band show, or just some nice visuals, you can't go wrong with Hekkyuu Euphonium. The Cada no Kyoukai film series is one of the most contemplative experiences I've been through. These are slow-paced films with many quiet moments, making the few moments where things do escalate all that more captivating. Shiki Ryogi is sensitive to death. The film centers around her and her various encounters with the abnormal. The films are presented anachronically, showcasing various events in Shiki's life from when she was a teenager until the series climax with her as an adult. This series is not something I would recommend to everyone. It's slow, as I've already said, but more importantly, it spends a lot of time pondering death, and exploring many possibly uncomfortable themes, such as the struggle to understand oneself, suicide, and many others. In the wrong mindset, hell, and even the right one, the series can come off as depressing, and one might question, why bother to watch it? Why indeed? And why did I like it so much? Frankly, I'm completely at a loss when it comes to answering that question. All I know is this: Cada no Kyoukai is a deeply emotional experience that will affect different viewers in different ways. That sounds like an awfully generic summation, and it is. Believe me, it is. It doesn't do nearly enough justice to the, here's the magic word again, experience that was this film series. But really, it's beyond me to describe with words just how this series makes me feel. One thing I can say for certain, however, is that aesthetically, these films are masterful. This should come off as no surprise, as this is Studio Fotable we're talking about here. From the numerous gorgeous wide-angle shots to the incredibly well-animated fight scenes, all accompanied by a stellar Yuki Kajiura soundtrack. If nothing else, you'll come out of this with an appreciation for this series' incredible production values. Shokugeki no Soma is what happens when you take a battle shonen and cross it with cooking, and frankly, it's delicious. Shokugeki no Soma follows Soma Yukihira, who enters what's basically the most elite and competitive cooking school ever, and has to fight to stay in, and by fight I of course refer to cooking battles. The cooking battles are the main reason why this show is so fun. It's got everything you need: high stakes, grandiose performances, an exciting soundtrack, along with a little oddity I'd like to talk about. You remember how in the earlier JoJos segment I complained about how explaining every move the fighters make slows down the action? Well, there's a similar tendency to explain the chef's actions here, but this time around it works and doesn't bother me, and here's why. Because it's cooking. The most important aspect of a cook-off is obviously the final dish, the food. As viewers, we aren't privy to its most important aspects: its smell, its taste. Since we only have our eyes and ears, the people tasting the food are required to explain how it tastes and provide some exceptional reaction to the food in order to give the viewer a sense of the battle's results. In a typical fight, all we need to see is a punch and the other guy spit out a tooth to understand what happened. And we don't need a narrator to reiterate that the punch was so strong it knocked his tooth out. Here, since we can't taste the food, the characters have to taste it for us, and they do an excellent job. The tasting of the food acts as the big payoff after all the cooking leading up to it, providing the viewer with plenty of satisfying and over-the-top reactions, most of which made me jealous, wishing I could cook half as good as these people. The reactions can and will be pretty ecchi though, so if that's not your thing, be warned. How fun the cooking battles are makes Shokugeki no Soma an exciting ride from beginning to end. Couple that with a likable and fun cast with high stakes where failure means expulsion and humiliation, and you've got a truly gripping show. With the second season looming on the horizon, you have very little reason not to watch it. Kyo Annie, I love you. What is Nichijou? Fun. That's what it is. Pure, unadulterated fun. It's got silly high school girls, a robot girl made by a young professor girl with a talking cat, and all sorts of crazy fun stuff. Nichijou's sole focus is humor, and it blasts it out of the park. I was laughing and smiling through every single episode, a feat few shows can boast. What's most notable about Nichijou, however, is how inventive and crazy it gets with its animation. There's humor in numerous shots, from this super high production shot of Mio running down a hole, which looks really damn impressive, to the simplest change of facial expressions. The ways in which Nichijou make me laugh are just too numerous to list. But let's try that anyway. Here are some of my favorite scenes. One that stuck out a lot to me was the House of Cards scene from episode 17. Its use of dialogue was fantastic in that there was none. This whole scene was funny due to the music and reactions of the characters. Sometimes silence is golden, and this scene proves it. There's also the airship scenes. They were amazing, if only for the payoff. And of course, the mid-episode rock, paper, scissors scenes. All of them. Glorious. You know what, I could go on like this, but I think you get the idea. Nichijou is fun, and really that's all it needs to be. So watch it. You won't regret it. And now, we of course, come to the one show that everyone watched this year. For those who live under a rock so massive it covers a continent, One Punch Man is about Saitama, a dude who's a hero for fun. Through his training, he's become so powerful that he defeats all of his foes with one punch. Of course, hilarity ensues. One Punch Man has been getting a lot of praise and attention, and for good reason. It is simultaneously really, really funny and really, really badass. The lead, Saitama, carries most of the show and could carry all of it if need be. His deadpan reactions to the most overblown crisis situations are priceless. No matter how incredible the enemy, he always wins in one punch and is like, well, I guess that takes care of that. It's a joke you'd think would get old quickly, but it never does. In fact, Saitama's best reaction comes in the finale, but that's spoilers. If the whole show was just that, it would have still been amazing, but one went one step beyond and built in a world full of heroes. This leads to the joke that despite having saved the world on multiple occasions, no one knows who the hell Saitama is because heroes have to be registered with the Hero Association in order for their accomplishments to be recognized. Of course, this leads to more heroes who are made out to be full of amazing awesomeness, only to be undercut by one punch. As much as I appreciate the world-building elements like those, I have to question their specific inclusion here. What I mean is, the main joke was so good that everything that's not directly about it could be seen as a distraction from it. That doesn't mean I don't enjoy all the Heroes Association stuff, far from it, but I have to wonder what the show would have been like if the focus was solely on Saitama. Better? Worse? Shorter even? But in any case, what we got was an amazing action comedy that no one should skip. Top-notch animation by Studio Madhouse only helps its case. And now, one of the all-time classics whose name carries such prestige and renown, it's almost a crime to have not seen it. Legend of the Galactic Heroes. Reinhard von Musel, a young genius admiral in the Galactic Empire with ambition to conquer the galaxy. Yang Wenli of the Free Planets Alliance, who aspires to be an historian but whose genius strategy and military tactics propel him high up into the Alliance fleet. On opposing sides of a galactic-scale conflict, the wars these two will wage, both between each other and within their own realms, will be the stuff of legends for centuries to come. Galactic Heroes is a show with space battles, yes, and they're awesome, but more important to note is just how much time is spent on characters talking. Galactic Heroes spends more time debating its political and social ideologies than it does waging epic war, and honestly, it's hard to say which is more interesting. After all, when the wars you're waging cost hundreds of thousands and even millions of lives at each battle, it's hard not to step back and think, what's the point of it all? And is it even worth it? Carrying out these debates and wars is a metric ton of diverse and interesting characters, and when I say metric ton, I'm referring only to the standouts among the well over 100 named characters that make an appearance. Obviously, no one is ever going to remember every single character here, but their sheer quantity help make the world of Galactic Heroes feel immense and teeming with life. Life that, while you know it's there, you'll never be able to get a full grasp on, like a whole colonized galaxy. Even then, those that do stand out leave such an impression that it's hard to stop thinking about them even months later. Royenthal, for instance, I can't stop thinking about. Were spoiler events that happened to him truly justified? Were they deserved? Could they have been avoided? Is it simply a matter of being the right person in the wrong time? Of course, Reinhard and Yang themselves are truly legendary. It's not hard to equate them both to Lelouch of Code Geass on an intellectual level, but Their personalities and ideologies really set them apart and make them intensely interesting. Yang in particular has become one of my favorite characters in anything. While he is a military genius, what really makes him shine is how laid back he otherwise is. When he's not contemplating all the lives these wars have cost, the lives he's taken, and soldiers he's sent to die. When he's not wondering if the democracy he's fighting for is truly worth it when Reinhardt's autocracy seems to be doing more than fine. He's being a funny guy going on about how humans have been drinking alcohol for thousands of years. And of course, it's impossible to forget episode 82. If, or once you've seen it, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. One thing I have to praise like everyone else is the series soundtrack. It's composed entirely of classical music, giving every scene a sense of grandeur and timelessness. Given the time the series was made in, I don't even want to imagine what the series would have been like with an original 80s soundtrack. What's especially interesting to note is this series' production. Legend of the Galactic Heroes is the longest-running OVA series in history at 110 episodes, not to mention several films and spin-off series. That it lasted for so long and became so well known, given that it started out with direct-to-video releases, is an impressive feat in and of itself. Legend of the Galactic Heroes truly is a legendary series, and one of the few I would say is a must-watch, and would definitely be number one if I didn't have such a stupid blind love for the next show. I am going to be frank. The show that has taken this number one spot, more than likely, won't deserve it in your eyes. In fact, I'll outright admit that Legend of the Galactic Heroes is technically superior in terms of thoughtful storytelling, world building, basically almost every aspect. Really, there's no justifiable reason for this show to be at the top, but... man, I just love me some HowToHe. So, HowToHe Suzumiya is a god, or some equivalent thereof. Except she doesn't know it, but that doesn't stop her from influencing the real world with her untold power. Also, she made a club where she unwittingly recruited a time traveler, an alien, and an Esper, all of whom want to observe her. The only normal guy in her life, who unwillingly got dragged into all of this, is Kyon, whose job it's become to keep her happy so she doesn't accidentally blow up the world in anger or something like that. Sounds stupid? Yes. Yes, it is. And I love it. And why? Why do I love it so? Because it's fun? Only partly. It's a fun show, yes. Very much so. I've had almost as many laughs and smiles with this one as, say, Nichijou. But if it was all about fun, then why is HowToHe here instead of Nichijou? Because of the characters? Well, that puts it above Nichijou for sure, but that's not the whole reason it's up here either. As fun as the characters in Nichijou are, you gotta admit they're pretty static. None of them grow or change significantly by the end. They stay as they are. HowToHe's characters feel much more three-dimensional, like real people I'd be down with hanging out with. HowToHe, the wild fun girl who's lost in thought almost as often as she's scheming crazy ideas. Yuki, who despite seeming so cold, can be so warm. Especially Kyon, who goes through an especially dramatic realization and disappearance and comes out the better for it. Even with all the supernatural shit going on, I don't have a single problem buying into these characters. I can also factor the soundtrack in as a part of it. It's one of my favorite soundtracks in anime. There's a good variety of great songs here that I can randomly play at any time to put a smile on my face. From this rather upbeat tune playing right now to everyone's favorite drum beat. I don't think I've ever heard so much fun packed into one soundtrack. It's really quite astonishing. And fun is exactly what it needed to be, fitting into the show beautifully. With so many fun and ridiculous moments in this show, there needed to be an equal variety of fun tracks so you didn't hear one fun track played over and over at every fun scene. And the variety is there, so the tracks never get stale and they're all amazing and it's great. So it's fun, and I love the characters. Great soundtrack, but that's not all of why I love it. Those are just the basic beats. If not just that, why else do I feel such fondness for the goofy adventures of the SOS Brigade? Well, that's a question I've been struggling with myself for a bit now, especially since trying to get this video together. Even when writing the script, even having already edited the other 9 segments of this video as I'm writing this, as I'm saying this, I wrestle over this question. And after all this time, have I come to any sort of answer? Let's hope. As best as I can figure, it's simply sentiment. On its own, introduced to me at any other time, this show would have been somewhere around number 5, let's say. But, as it happens, HowToHe happened to be near when I needed it the most. Now, I'm not about to go super emotional on you or anything. I don't want the general public to try to psychoanalyze me or whatever. But what I'm getting at is, through pure happenstance, HowToHe has become one of the most personally uplifting series that I can watch. Any episode at any time is almost always what I need to lift my spirits, whether I had a really shitty day or was just really bored. Even when gathering footage for this video, a process which involves playing episodes, it was absurdly difficult to pick out certain clips and not just sit back and watch and have fun, which I did do. HowToHe takes the number 1 spot, not because it deserves it, or because it's the best anime ever, not because of any intricate narrative or being some sort of benchmark of fiction that needs to be recognized. It's here because of, well, sentiment. Because HowToHe is HowToHe, and really, that's all I need.
なぞなぞみたいに地球儀を解き明かしたら黙って誰にも言わないさワクワクしたいと願いながら過ごすのかよ叶えたいことはないかもな時間が狂ってブーワープでループなこの集まりいつの間にか巻き込まれ妄想がはびこる誰か止めろある晴れた日のこと魔法以上の愉快を限りなく望んでる奴が問題お前だよお前明日また